On the 16th day of the war, a reporter asked Donald Trump when it would be over. Trump paused for a moment and then gave an answer that immediately spread across global headlines. He said the war would end when he felt it, not when Iran surrendered, not when the Strait of Hormuz reopened, not when a ceasefire was signed or a diplomatic framework was agreed. He said it would end when the President of the United States felt it in his bones. That statement became the most unusual timeline yet for ending what had already become the most disruptive military conflict the global energy market had ever experienced. On the very same day that answer was given, the Pentagon announced a new deployment. 2,200 United States Marines and a Navy amphibious assault ship were being sent to the Middle East. The ship is the USS Tripoli, an amphibious assault vessel based in Japan. It is now sailing toward the Gulf carrying what military planners describe as a Marine Expeditionary Unit. That unit includes helicopter gunships, armed infantry, special operations teams, armored vehicles, transport aircraft, and landing craft designed to put troops on a hostile shore. The unit was requested by United States Central Command and personally approved by the Secretary of Defense. The stated mission is to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. This is the moment many analysts identify as the turning point that few officials want to describe openly. What began as an air campaign has started to evolve into something else. For 2 weeks, the conflict consisted primarily of aircraft, drones, and long-range missiles striking targets from the sky. American and Israeli forces targeted Iranian military infrastructure from a distance. But the Marines boarding the USS Tripoli are not pilots. They are infantry. They are the people deployed when territory must be taken, defended, or physically controlled. Their arrival in the Gulf could fundamentally change the nature of the conflict. It also exposes them to one of the most complex and dangerous maritime environments in modern warfare. For many observers, the situation evokes uncomfortable historical memories. The last time the United States committed large numbers of ground forces to prolonged conflict in the Middle East, it took 2 decades before the war finally ended. The Secretary of Defense addressed the situation during a press conference. Standing at the Pentagon podium, he declared that United States and Israeli forces were striking Iranian military capabilities at a pace the world had never seen before. According to his statement, more than 15,000 Iranian targets had been struck since the campaign began. He claimed that military production lines, weapons facilities, and defense innovation centers had been severely degraded. He also argued that Iran's leadership was desperate and hiding, but events unfolding elsewhere created a stark contrast with that narrative. At the same time, those remarks were being delivered in Washington. A large public rally was taking place in Tehran. The event drew thousands of people into the streets during the annual Quds Day demonstrations. Standing in full public view were senior Iranian officials, including the country's president and the head of the Supreme National Security Council. Both appeared in daylight, surrounded by crowds and cameras. The scene presented a dramatically different image from the one described in Washington. This gap between competing narratives has become one of the defining characteristics of the conflict. Statements delivered at podiums are often followed by events on the ground that complicate the picture. And it is within this information gap that the United States is now sending thousands of Marines toward the Gulf. To understand why this deployment matters, it helps to understand the geography of the Strait of Hormuz. At its narrowest point, the strait is roughly 33 kilometers wide, yet it is one of the most strategically important waterways on the planet. A massive portion of the world's oil shipments passes through this narrow corridor connecting the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. On one side of the strait lies Iran's coastline, stretching for hundreds of kilometers along the eastern edge of the Gulf. Over decades, Iran has developed a dense network of coastal defenses along this shoreline. These include anti-ship missile batteries, hardened launch sites, underground storage facilities, and mobile missile platforms designed specifically to target naval vessels. Many of these systems are capable of striking ships hundreds of kilometers away. This means that vessels traveling through the strait can be targeted even when missile launchers are positioned far inland. The United States has conducted continuous airstrikes against Iranian military targets since the conflict began. But destroying every missile launcher and every mobile platform is extremely difficult. Many systems are designed to move quickly and operate from concealed positions. Launchers can relocate within hours, missiles can be stored underground, and crews trained to operate them can disperse and regroup elsewhere. Destroying a single launcher may require only one strike. Eliminating the entire network is far more complex. That challenge is central to why Marines are now being deployed. Officials have suggested that naval escorts for commercial ships could soon begin moving through the strait. But before that can happen, military planners must reduce the threat from coastal missile systems and sea mines. Over the past 2 weeks, Iran has also had time to move equipment and reposition assets. Missile launchers that were visible to satellites weeks ago may no longer be in the same locations. The intelligence picture changes quickly during wartime. As a result, the Marines aboard the USS Tripoli may be entering an environment that is far from fully secured. Marine expeditionary units are designed for exactly these kinds of operations. They can launch helicopter assaults, conduct amphibious landings, and establish defensive positions in contested territory. They can move rapidly and operate independently for extended periods. But they are also exposed to significant risk in environments where enemy missile systems and naval mines are present. The stakes surrounding the Strait of Hormuz extend far beyond military strategy. The global economy is heavily dependent on energy shipments moving through this narrow waterway. Shipping data illustrates the magnitude of the disruption. During the same period last year, more than 1,200 ships passed through the strait. This year, only a small fraction of that number has made the journey. Hundreds of cargo vessels remain anchored outside the waterway, waiting for conditions to improve. Insurance companies have raised costs dramatically or withdrawn coverage entirely. Shipping companies are reluctant to send crews into a conflict zone. Some countries have begun exploring alternative diplomatic arrangements to secure safe passage for their vessels. These developments highlight the economic pressure created by the closure of the strait. Energy markets have reacted sharply. Oil prices have fluctuated dramatically as traders respond to each new development in the conflict. Governments have turned to emergency stockpiles in an attempt to stabilize markets. But those reserves are limited. Ultimately, the long-term solution depends on restoring safe navigation through the strait. That objective lies at the heart of the current escalation. 2 weeks of intense air operations have not yet reopened the waterway. The deployment of Marines signals that new measures may now be considered. Military planners often follow a simple logic. If an air campaign alone cannot achieve a strategic objective, additional forces may be required to address the problem from another direction. In this case, the objective is clear: reopen the Strait of Hormuz and restore global shipping routes. Whether that can be accomplished without further escalation remains uncertain. Diplomatic channels continue to operate quietly behind the scenes. Messages are exchanged through intermediaries, but public statements from both sides remain firm. Iranian officials have declared that they will continue resisting military pressure. American leaders maintain that the campaign will continue until security conditions improve. Between these competing positions lies a tense and uncertain standoff. For the Marines now sailing toward the Gulf, the mission represents a critical moment in the unfolding conflict. Their arrival could mark the beginning of a new phase in a war that has already reshaped global energy markets and geopolitical alliances. And while political leaders debate strategy and issue statements to the world, events in the narrow waters of the Strait of Hormuz may ultimately determine how the conflict evolves. For now, the ships are moving, the Marines are on their way, and the world continues watching as one of the most strategically important waterways on Earth becomes the center of a rapidly escalating crisis.